27th, and this is devlog number 4 for Project Kickstep. Yeah, it's been a while. So let's jump right into it. Been doing a wide number of things since the last update. The one you're looking at right here is the cell shader that I've for the sake of my game. I'm not an artist at heart, and so I don't think I'll be able to lean on like particularly high quality assets, such as like texturing and whatnot. But where I can make up for that is would be a good idea is to make a shader that makes it kind of pop. So what you're looking at right now is kind of just a test environment where I was playing with like how the different effects of colors and whatnot blend into each other look. So this is, I think, the tentative end result that I'll be working with. I don't know. I will certainly look more into like different shading tutorials and whatnot to see if I can like really flesh it out further. But what we have right here is just like sort of base fundamental style shader for just looking at the light values and adjusting their banding. So you can kind of see like what's going on here. We've got like looks like 5 shades of this sort of bluish cyan color before we hit the black, and so I think this does a good job of like really highlighting some of the light spots. I'm envisioning Project Kickstep being sort of a cyberpunk style game where there will be a fair amount of dark and dim lighting, so having the color really like get exaggerated I think will do a lot to accentuate that. So real quick, I did want to kind of like just show off an alternative that I was looking at. So this is just a cell shader based on the lighting values, which is to say that it only cares about brightness for developing the bands. You still have these like gradients right here, this yellow to red. There's like a very smooth, like soft transition through orange between them. But I also wanted to see, I wasn't a big fan of that originally, and there's a part of me that still would like to see that changed, but in reality, or in practice, I should probably say, it probably won't be that big a deal. There won't be a ton of like different colored lightings touching each other, maybe. But anyway, but one thing I also did come up with is an RGB based cell shader. So this is like looking at the luminosity values effectively, and then if it ever hits if it ever drops between a certain threshold, then it kind of rounds that luminosity down. It truncates it effectively. So, if this like, I'm making up numbers here, but let's say this is a brightness of like 1, or say like 1.2 or something, it actually gets rounded up to 2, which is to say it's like brighter than your typical red, just in normal average lighting settings. And then this one, if it's between a lighting value of 1 and 0.8 or something, I don't really remember what the numbers I used were, then it gets dropped down to a 1, and this is like 0.8 to 0.4, then it's like a 0.6 value, so on, etc. And naturally you can extend this the cell shader to have more bands, but I think the number I have here, it's like 5 or so. I guess 6 if you count black. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 if you count black. I think it looks pretty alright, so, maybe tweak later. But what I wanted to show is that RGB shader, so I will just turn this one off. This is what it looks like with, I guess, just say the base lighting for Unreal Engine. And turn on. And this one I think only has 4 bands, and the values are obviously set different, but you can see in a vacuum it looks pretty similar, right? We've got this like bright yellow, we got duller one black. Where it gets kind of fancy, or like where its distinction is really shown, is in the middle here. We have colors overlapping, and so you can see like these spheres, for reference, are white. Their coloration is entirely from the lights, which are these light bulbs. But yeah, you can see what we're now doing is we're actually rounding each RGB value individually, which means that like there's no gradients whatsoever. It all gets kind of clumped, which creates kind of a interesting, almost like a plaid texture, which again, this probably wouldn't be super common in like an actual level setting, but more so when you have just a bunch of lights next to each other of different shades, different colors. But it does make it so everything's like grouped in a clean, consistent fashion, which I think is pretty neat. like I'm happy, I guess, with it in this vacuum here, like this test bed. But where I didn't like it was when I was like trying to set up like a level, and it's like, oh, I want like the entire environment to have maybe like a bluish shade because it's like late in, and then I start adding lights like a red. What ends up happening is the red mixes with the blue, and it like because of how the rounding and like functions, you end up with like a pink shade, which is not terrible, but it makes it kind of hard then to get the lighting you want to like settle the way you are actually envisioning the level. So ultimately, I decided to, you know, icebox this approach for now. Maybe I'll look at it again when I'm looking at shaders again in general. But for now, set you back. For now, we're working with this. And here we have, yeah, the red line is what I'm calling it. It is sort of like, you could say, like the intro space to a I guess to a like the proper level proper, where you'll be entering a subway entrance, going down some like sort of dimly lit stairways here. And I mean I'll demo this, I guess, in gameplay. Drop down the elevator shaft, and you wind up. Oops, you wind up on the platform. For the namesake, the red line. There is not really any proper, we'll say, like gameplay arenas. Like, I'm imagining this being sort of a Doom-esque game where you like, you know, you waltz into an arena with enemies and you kind of fight it out there, and then you progress to the next one, so on and so forth, with collectibles or some such in the middle to like break up the gameplay loop a little. For now, I've not really approached the topic of the arenas, like the actual like the actual like the condensed gameplay loop just yet. And that's because I'm still, you know, iterating on the actual movement mechanics and combat mechanics. I don't know what the character will have access to at this point, so I can't like realistically sculpt the level that the player will have fun in without knowing that stuff first. But I did want to kind of take my hand at like the Unreal's tooling for like getting levels up and running, or at least like prototype levels, right? You know, and this is all just kind of like a big mesh built out of cubes. I say cubes, but it's not like I place them individually. You're like stretching, you're using a cube grid, and you're like iterating on that, like expanding at pillars and such. So I think it does a good job of like kind of being a template, but ideally it'd be like a proper, like, you know, a mesh by an artist. So this may or may not be a placeholder. I think this is a good example though of how the cell shader does a lot of work. Like, for one, it's really dark, so you might not even realize how like non-textured everything is. This is all just like a white, maybe it's gray, but it's all nothing, and the colors are doing everything to like give anything like a pop. So I think that really demonstrates the value of having a good shader, honestly. But yeah, something else that is distinct, again, not distinct, what am I saying? Something else to note about this level is that there's actually a level sequence to go with it. So when I hit play here, we will actually see the camera kind of pan through all the stuff I just showed in a sort of cinematic style way. I don't know if I'd actually have it like this, because I think it'd be more interesting to just experience it firsthand initially, or maybe I would have it, but I'd cut it down a little bit so it's not showing every little segment that exists at the time. But I wanted to flex that muscle a little bit, or I mean, you know, grow it and then flex it. So I'll show that off real quick. So here we go. We just have it playing. Blow slow zooms. Oh yeah, some of the lighting that we went through actually flickers when the game is actually running. See that here in the cutscene. And yeah, that elevator event is kind of bugged. It opens and then closes. It's supposed to just open and let you through. Yeah. So here I am now playing. Same controls. It's still the player character that we've known and love. But yeah, now you can see it like in real time, I guess. Go down the steps. That flickering light, a little bit dimmer than the other one. Trying to capture a sort of like desolate environment for this level, which will be right here. You can see now we're actually just every platform of the stairwell has had a light, and except for this one, it's missing it entirely. I'm definitely gonna have to tune down the flash of the gun. I made that before the shader, and now it's like very apparent that it's just too bright. It doesn't need to be like this. But yeah. So you can see there's actually like rubble here. Again, this is like sort of me just using like basic shapes and stuff to kind of represent everything. This is maybe where it's the worst looking. But it blocks your way going down the stairwell, and I did that just because I was like the stairwell. I want the environment to be massive, the arena in theory. But I'm not gonna have you go down the massive stairwell to make it enough room, so I'll just have you kind of cut a corner here, and also just break up the monotony. Drop down the elevator chute. Gotta be careful here, because there is a hole in between the elevators that you cannot get out of if you fall. Jump across, end up in here. And there's also an interact system that I have. You can actually see it's a little fidgety at the moment. I think the issue is I'm doing a what is it called, like a multi-sphere trace channel that's looking for a collision, and if it collides with the thing, then and that thing is interactable, then it'll highlight it like such. Issue is that it's only colliding with the first thing. So if I'm standing at like a weird angle like this, I'm hitting, even though it's actually pretty wide. Like you don't have to look straight at it. But the issue is if any other thing is intersecting it before the interactable does, then it runs into issues because it just doesn't see the other thing. It like immediately stops tracing, which is why I can look at it from this angle and it doesn't show up. But anyway, go up. We hit E. Enable interact. Oops. E. Get a little notification. Okay, maybe that didn't. Well, okay. Something to be iterated on. The door isn't activatable. It should be. Maybe I can debug this real quick. Activatables. Activation delay. 2 doors. You know, come back to it later. But you can kind of already see at this point you just be looking at this environment for what it is. I don't think the stairwell is actually blocked, so you could go up and eventually you just fall out of the level. But yeah. That kind of sums up the level design stuff that I've been doing. Just wanted to take a crack at it. You know, I kind of felt like maybe getting something more visual would do something to kind of inspire me, and I think it has, actually. I have some interesting ideas for gameplay interactions. Maybe not interactions, but like setting up the visual element has done some stuff to inspire me a bit, so I'm eager to now get back into the combat mechanic stuff. I actually wanted to highlight / shout out this software that I found somewhat recently called Cascadeur. It is a software dedicated to some really, I would say, exceptional inverse kinematic tooling, and it's not just inverse kinematics, but tooling around trying to get the character to pose and gesture in a very realistic way. So here I've just kind of spun off a quick little duplicate of one of my like starter setups for this character. I've done a handful of animations, and I've still got to get them into like Unreal and like set up. But this is me now jumping back into the combat mechanic. As I said, I want like the movement to feel right. I want your character to have a tangibility in the world, unlike a lot of first-person shooters where you're just a gun clipped to a corner of the camera, and you typically don't have feet at all, and you kind of just glide around along the ground. I want there to be of, I think it's verisimilitude to how you just move. If you ever played Dark Messiah, yeah, any of the Dark Messiah games, or maybe it's just the one, I can't remember. Like the way you move in that game, I think just feels exceptional. And obviously there's some like considerations with accessibility about like you don't have too much head bobbing and you can't play it or whatever. There can't be too much motion for a first-person game, but I've always felt like there could be more than most games have. So I've been using Cascadeur because well, basically it just takes a lot of the work out of it for me. Compared to some of the animations that I made just in Unreal Engine's control rigging stuff, this process has been a lot faster. So I'm not gonna do like an entire animation. I actually did like one take of this video already where I did that, and it kind of just stretched on too long. Don't think it was necessary, but I do want to do a quick thing, I suppose. So I'm just gonna delete these extra scene frames. So what we have is just kind of like a standard character. If you've ever messed with control rigging and inverse kinematics, like some of this will look familiar, but also some of this will look new and exciting, I hope. Um, so right now these are, I'm in like auto pose mode. Yeah. So I have all these little vectors by which I can grab the character and kind of drag them around. One thing I think you'll notice right away, well, I'm kind of dragging it too far actually, but you'll notice the other arm is actually contorting when I move this. This is what the auto pose is referencing. Your character actually tries to maintain some semblance of balance in a way that seems practical and reasonable. You can also see my character's hand is rotating, and the elbow is bending out in a way that is somewhat reasonable. It's not always like perfect. I find in general the hands actually tend to rotate maybe too much downward, like palm facing down, for what I would expect. But you can still see like it's pretty smart, like, and it's so nice to just have like a decent reference, like. And this is not like you might just think, oh, it's like mirrored, but you can tell that they're actually a little offset, right? Like, this is not trying to just perfectly mirror the other side, but it is trying to sort of imitate this left hand is trying to imitate the right hand a little bit to keep your balance. Now, one thing you'll notice is that now that I move this, the node is blue, or it's yellow when I have it highlighted, but it's blue right here, just like the feet and just like the pelvis and this head direction one. That means it's kind of anchored, and so long as I don't do such an exaggerated motion that it drags the hand, or like it forces the model to kind of drag out of that position, it'll actually stay there. So now if I move this hand, you'll see that the hand is pretty stationary. Although you can still see there's some jostling still. It's still trying to keep balance, but now it's like shifting the weight at the knees and at the pelvis. You're kind of leaning slightly instead of just moving the hand. So this stuff is like great and it's fantastic. I can disable, let's see, I can disable these two at the middle, so now a character, you can kind of see his knees went a little more slack, and like if I wanted to, let's even disable these, let's disable the hands entirely, everything's free to move except we'll disable it all, screw it, except for the feet. We'll do like a quick little step, so I just said I wasn't going to do an animation, but here I am. And so I'm going to drag the foot forward, and already you kind of see, okay, like, the character's actually trying to spin to, like, now create a stance, a wider stance, which is not what I want. I want the character to stay facing forward. So I'm going to actually grab this. This is like the pelvis direction. It's like the way you're angling your like, hips, kind of. I'm going to rotate this. And also my chest is, like, still pointed out to the side, so we're going to rotate this as well. So now you can already see we've got something of a step. And actually, I kind of screwed up because I should have made this on a separate frame, so I'm just going to do it real quick. Give myself a few frames. Yeah, we'll do a much simpler one than I did before. I did like a jump in the other video, but I didn't like how it turned out anyway. So I'm going to hit Shift Z and Shift Z, and that means these two are now locked, even though I didn't move them anywhere, so that's just a quick way to do it. I don't have to like actually move them to lock it in, I can just do that. We'll grab this foot. Actually, we'll go to the other frame. Don't make that mistake. Again. Lock these two. Okay. And we'll drag the foot forward. And you can already see the characters kind of swinging their arms like they're walking. Like, that's how smart this software is. It's so cool. And you know what? Let's make it like a kind of like a squat. So I'm going to double click the spine up here, and that'll grab everything below it on the hierarchy. So in the so basically the spine and above. And then we'll also grab the pelvis itself. Should have held shift. And we will kind of drop it a little bit. Oh, you can see, and so you can see, and so this is where like it doesn't always work the way you want it to. You can see the foot like flips here. That's because actually you could say it's like the ankle or like the top of the foot is anchored, and so it doesn't know how to resolve this. There's like now not enough room for the foot to bend this way. So we'll do this. We'll actually let it bend. I want the character to come pretty low, and then what I'll do is I'll unlock. In some cases you can't unlock the feet because they are necessary, but I'm going to raise it up and to drag this part of the foot a little bit forward, so we're getting a little bit of ankle bend action. And now, if I press it into the ground, you can actually see the toes. I can see it maybe better on the side view here. Toes are starting to like bend to like meet the ground. So now we've got this nice like lunge motion. So let's one frame, other frame. Okay, so now we can just highlight both sections, or actually we can just highlight the keyframe even. And click this little arrow to open up our interpolation options. And I'm going to use Bezier clamped. These are just like curves in which the locomotion, like the different posing elements are sort of segued from one to the other. I want to say Bezier clamped is sort of like the typical quadratic, like exponential increase into exponential decrease, so it gives like a pretty traditional smooth curve. I think Bezier just unclamped can actually overshoot the motion a little bit, so you get a little more jostle, but it can also lead to weird things where stuff clips and whatnot. I don't really remember what Bezier Viscous does. I have not. So that. And of course linear, and then I guess step. Step is like what we're in right now, technically. It just snaps to the next pose. But yeah, so let's do Bezier clamped. And now you can see we're kind of like sliding, doing a nice little slide. So this might be good enough if you wanted to skate, but we can actually just do like a quick little glance at the physics assist tool. Because this is like really this is like the magic button of this software. If I clicked physics assistant, we actually get now a green boy who's kind of just doing the same thing up ahead. And wonder how this will look. Oh, okay, interesting. So you can kind of see our character's actually doing like a what is this called? Like a squat jump or a squat burpee? I don't know what this is called. But what's happening here is the physics assistant is actually trying to like take it a step further and trying to account for like, oh, this is how the knees bend, this is how their stride changes, their feet move this much. So I'm going to assume like this is a static pose and this is a like a motion pose. And so what it's doing is it's trying to account for that stuff and like make the character move in a way that incorporates physics and kind of resembles what I have. So one of the things I can do to touch this up is, because like I said I was envisioning it as a lunge, right? So the back foot should never rise up, but if I move this over, we can definitely see that the character's like doing a weird hop. And so one thing I can do to correct that is on this frame, I can click all of these, let's say, and I go to fulcrum point, and I'm going to say the max speed should be higher. Actually, yeah, there we go. So now you can see these are green, and so this only shows up when the physics assistant is active. And what it's saying is it's saying the physics assistant now recognizes these as static points that are on the ground. They should not slide, they should not lift off, unless like I animate them explicitly to do so. Physics assistant now registers this as like a foot that is on the ground. Whereas before it was like, because it slid backwards a little bit, my animation's a little rough, it sees it as like, oh, this is like, your character is sliding, which means we can't take for granted that it's a fulcrum. It's not a point that your character is necessarily balanced on. And so then the physics assistant goes a step further and is like, okay, and if you're not properly anchored on this part of the foot, it might be a jump motion, because all of my feet were moving. And that's fine for this foot, right? This one should be a step. But this back foot is mostly planted. Like, it leans forward a little bit, which is why I only grabbed these three. But yeah, so now, also you might have noticed this bar up here at the top of the timeline is now yellow. It was orange before. If I undo it real quick. There we go. Now it's orange again. That's indicating like how anchored your character is effectively, like how many pivot points you have. So the fact that I have 0 feet that are anchored is means it's orange, which is like it's the physics assistant telling you, hey, this is kind of being interpreted as like a jump or a slide or something. Your character's not tethered to the ground. Let's go ahead and go back and add that again. There we go. And so if I just scrub through it now, the foot, it still slides back a little bit because that's how I have the keyframes. But you can see now a physics assistant is doing something a little more like what I have. Let's actually get rid of this. So now you can see the distinction. I got rid of the offset, so now they're just on each other. For the keyframes, it's still trying to imitate what I have, like it's perfectly as it can. But it's the way this interpolation is running now that it's trying to kind of account for physics a little bit. So my character, the physics system is actually taking an even more exaggerated approach to how the character like shifts their way. Like it's like lagging behind for most of it. I guess it's like it's a little ahead, like your character's leaning forward a bit, and then about here in the middle, the unphysics assistant version is like now shifting ahead, and then it kind of catches back up here at the very end. So, and you know, there's tons of sliders. I'm not gonna get into it, but you can do things like secondary motion and smoothing the trajectory. So, okay, I'll do the secondary motion actually, because it's just such an easy one and a neat one in my opinion. So with I now have secondary motion enabled, and what this does is it adds a little bit of like follow through on limbs. So like legs and feet now have a little bit of lag time because they're actually like trying to catch up to like the greater mass of your body. And if I turn it off again real quick, just entirely off, this is what we have as a reference point. Just kind of look at the arms. Turn these off. Just like you can see there, like they keep a relatively similar posture as the gray version, and actually we don't need to have them mapped to see that. But now if let's just, so now I can hit play actually. We're sort of doing like our little sliding squat. Now if I go to the physics assistant and I crank up the secondary motion, just bit by bit, you'll start seeing the hand kind of trail. It's admittedly not very easy to see with this particular animation. Okay, here we go. This is actually a good indicator. I will say, like at 100, it looks like your arms are broken for most animations I've seen. So this is actually like relatively muted, but you can see the difference now here at the wrist, right? The hand is actually kind of like just drooping almost. Your character's like almost whipping their hand instead of like keeping it stiff and firm. Yeah, let's actually, yeah, okay, we'll do it. Let's just like have the hand like shoot up, so your character's like really swinging it a little bit. I don't want it to be too high, because if you like break the 180, then it gets confused, and I have to like add more keyframes to tell it how to do it. Okay, so now our hand, there we go. You can kind of see the hand is like sort of whipping a little bit. Actually, let's extend it further. Reaching for something here. We'll even have the shoulder kind of come forward a little bit. Okay. Okay, it's a little more noticeable now. You can kind of see the hands like swinging. So, yeah, that's all it is. And there's a couple other modes like this. Compensation motion, I think, is like how your character compresses from like a fall or a fall-like motion. Smooth rotation has to do with how they're like facing. So if you have them do like a pivot or something, like in place, that'll be a good one. But yeah, this tool is so cool. It's allowed me to like really jump through so many different iterations of animations, and I like to show them off here, but actually I think it'd be cooler if I showed them off maybe once I have them implemented in Unreal. So I'll see you in the next one.